Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Ken and Jens. This is 5 hours earlier than I'm normally used to getting up. This is like 7 o'clock in the morning in Kansas. I never get up at the crack. I usually get up at the crack of noon, and I start working hard around midnight. But because of the opportunity to work with Jens in Copenhagen, I was willing to do the unnatural thing, which is get up early and come to work on time. So I'm going to give that a try today. Really pleased to have a chance to work with Jens on this crazy concept called protreptic coaching. And I think, Jens, you call it protreptic coaching, not just because that's the Greek word, but also that's the hardest word to say
Yeah,
that I know. I and that way it forces me to be deliberate about saying it, and it brings
yeah,
me into the moment. So
yeah.
I'm doing very well this morning. I'm really honored and pleased and happy to see you. I enjoy our conversations. I'm looking forward to this coaching session so that we can talk about soccer like we usually do. So
Yeah, that's
it's that
true. Yeah,
time. It's that time of year. So good morning, sir, and good afternoon to you. How are you doing
yeah,
today? I'm Ken Long, by the way, from True Storytelling in the Heartland in Kansas. I'm a retired Army officer, full-time college professor for the Army in MBA programs. I'm a business consultant. I'm most importantly a soccer coach, and I'm learning about true storytelling for the past year with Jens and David Boji and the team. And so this is a chance for us to do some true storytelling coaching in public, so we can see what we can see. I've shared a little bit of background material about thoughts and the circumstances I'm in with Jens, and then we just thought we'd start pushing the record button right from the beginning so we could see what it looks like unfiltered. So that's by way of introduction. And over to you, Jens. How are you doing this morning? And when you're ready, I'm ready.
thank you, Ken. And again, it's always nice to working with you, have these conversation. Yeah, and as you said, I'm here in Copenhagen, Denmark, and it's afternoon, and I'm a co-founder of the True Storytelling Institute, where I also work with Ken. We are very, very glad to have him as a part of our team. That's incredible. I have a background actually in literature, and I have, for the last 20 years, I've been working with coaching, writing several books about coaching, storytelling, ethics, and I have been coaching leaders at all levels, and working with leadership, startups, sustainability, all kind of things. Anyway, but I think that one of my big passions has always been to actually have good conversation with people. And last night I was in a group with an investor group here in Denmark I'm a part of, and I also actually said in my presentation that one of my passions is to have good and meaningful conversation with people which can move them forward. And if I don't know, Ken, should I say a few words about this protreptic coaching?
Well, I think so. I'd like you to kind of talk about it because it is, I feel, a centerpiece of true storytelling in the world. That there are many elements of true storytelling that stand alone, and just the bringing to the surface true stories in a public way. The act of telling stories, I have discovered, changes who we are, when we tell a true story, because we've never told it exactly that way. And when we hear ourselves telling stories, it changes who we are. And that is good and beautiful and true, which is part of that Greek square you teach, right? But it also raises the energy to do things. And it lets you see things in a new way, new possibilities. And so when we want to take action on those things, that is the most natural response, is to want to do something with this truth that has emerged. And you and I are both old enough now to know that maybe our first impulse is not always the best one to put all our energy into, that we want to explore the things that come to the surface. Sometimes the true stories will generate tension, conflict, or unclarity, or two different ways of interpreting. I have a theory about why that happens. It's and protreptic coaching, therefore, is, as you'll help us understand, is a way to unpack that, to clarify it, to realign it. My belief is this: that we use our words and concepts to anchor our feelings and our understanding, and those things are connected to stories. Well, sometimes the story shows us one aspect of a concept or a word or a value, and a different story exposes a different side of that concept, like truth, duty, friendship, love. All of those things have many meanings, and they are all connected to these powerful emotional stories. And when our true stories bring these to the surface, and we hear the true stories of others, we realize that tension, that gray area, multiple meanings. And so how do we improve our understanding of those? How do we place those in a pleasing, satisfying, proper way? You can try it yourself, but when you're in the hands of a good professional guide like yourself, I want to climb mountains with a guy who has climbed mountains before, as I'm learning how to climb mountains. And so protreptic guiding in the way you deliver it, I found to be very empowering, clarifying. It's very efficient in the sense that you're able to get right to the root of things, but without ever telling me what to do. But you act, in my view, like a guide with a light, and you represent for me accountability, the face of the public, the real world asking me genuine questions. And that's what protreptic feels like to me. And that's been my direct experience of it. That it has been powerfully clarifying. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, where it comes from and how it has become your way of working in the world.
Yeah, sure. The concept, you can say, when we introduce it, we always say that it's the first concept of coaching in the world. I'm not sure, but it's actually back from ancient Greek, where Aristoteles, one of the big philosophers of that time, sorry for my English, he had a academy for leaders, and his goal were to educate leaders who were strong in their ethics. In that sense, they should, instead of acting out from feelings, emotion, they should be grounded, rooted in values and ethics. And the way he did it, and the way we do it today, is that we have conversations where we explore values, concepts which are important for you as a human being, and for a leader who wants to do good for yourself, but always, and that is very, very important, this coaching concept is about doing good in the world and try to act on a ethics ground somehow. So it's not only about you, it's about your organization, it's about your team, it's about the world around you. And these protreptic conversation, you can say that they prepare you for the event that you are walking into after. So if you have implemented these strong value in yourself, then you can, I don't know, stand in the eye of the hurricane somehow, without getting blown away. And people who are, working with leadership, and they know there's a lot of resistance out there. So it's important to be grounded in these things. And very, very short, this concept again, this is the first book, and I was happy it's in Danish. I was happy to be a part of it, because this approach to coaching was, there's a famous Danish philosopher and professor from Copenhagen Business School, Ole Fogh Kirkeby, who took this approach up back around 2005, and I work closely with Ole, and I still do right now. We are working on a new book. And one last thing, the word means actually to turn people to something which is important for themselves and for the world.
Yeah, I will tell you that in the course of my studies over the past 10 or 15 years, my wife reminds me that I have purchased, I think, 5,000 books as part of my... and it turns out that I am not very effective in buying books. Of those 5,000 books, I think I've read 50 cover to cover in great detail. I didn't know which 50 I was supposed to read until I had bought all of them and skimmed them, and then trusted my feelings to find the ones that I couldn't put down. And I will tell you that the protreptic book, I took a shortcut by buying the English translation. I was not committed enough yet to. I didn't trust my ability to learn Danish to read it in the original, but I will say that the protreptic book, although it's thin, has so much power in it that I've read it cover to cover several times already and taken detailed notes, which is unusual behavior for me, because I normally like to just read about it and have a few words to prove that I read it. But this is one that I have committed to a deep study, because my background as a military officer, as a soccer coach, as a executive coach, has very much been involved for 40 years in the development of leaders and subordinates to make them competent in the world. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about how to be a good teacher, coach, and mentor. And so I was very strongly influenced and affected by the protreptic technique, the ideas, the implementation of it, because I believe it walks a very beautiful line in between advisor but not really advising, coaching but not directing, supporting but not totally accommodating, if I can say it that way. There's in the positive psychology movement and appreciative intelligence, and self-esteem movements, there's a lot of ideas that say, hey, just no matter what, always be giving praise and you can do no wrong. Well, protreptic has a long tradition of accepting the world as it is and really trying to understand the world as it is, the good and the bad, whatever is there is a start point. So I was really attracted to the way it works to find that careful path, whereas the coach, I felt you have guided me to the right questions, but I've kept the responsibility to explore my own space, but in a public way with accountability, and with a fair, deep listening for the purpose of clarification. So it's always, the locus of control feels like it's always in the person being coached, but that the responsibility of the coach is to be that shining light to help navigate and to stay on the path that we agree that we want to walk, which is to help me explore some of these different ideas. So let me let you respond to that, and then I think I'll give a 1-minute background of the material that we had decided to talk about today.
I will try. My background is, I don't know. Okay, I think it's fine here.
There it is.
Yeah. So anyway, Ken, I think I will. The way that we do this protreptic coaching, in that sense, you can say, if you how it's different from other forms of coaching, and it could be like you are talking about this approach inquiry, and it is that in a way you can almost say that you are not allowed to use examples from your life
as the coach.
Yeah, as the coach. And also, when you ask for questions, you are not allowed to ask into personal stories or stories from work life. What we are doing in a protreptic coaching is that we together, and that's also different from, I think, most coaching, we are exploring concepts which are important for the person. And the whole idea to do it at a more, I don't know, general level is to move ourselves up from this everyday stream of consciousness. And another thing which I really like about it is that we can have a really deep conversation about a concept which is important for you. It can be self-care. Perhaps a lot of people, they should be more aware of that. But we can still have the secret in the protreptic coaching. I don't know to share what my wounds are in my life, but when I know what they are, but exploring the concept perhaps of self-care is a way to get deeper into it. And you can say, in that sense, protreptic coaching has some it's the whole idea about to put some lights on something which is important for you and explore it. And it is not about reaching a certain goal. It is more about to implement, as I said, some core values, some core concepts in yourself. So in that sense, it is not like I'm going to reach something. It is more like, okay, this is what I stand for in this world. And I know it also here in Denmark, in the organizations here in Denmark, companies, but also in university, public schools, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of that people want to be something, and people want to please people out there. And this is actually about to say, no, this is what I'm staying for, and if you have this, if you have implemented, then you can be more flexible. I would say you can also almost be more, I don't know, agile. I don't know if that's the right word.
Agile.
Yeah. Because you have it in your almost body. I don't know if that, but it is that to explore a concept. And just one last thing, when I have these conversation, very often it starts with, like an ordinary coaching where people are sharing some challenges. They are perhaps, it can be stress, or they have a hard time working with a colleague. And then in that conversation, I will look for what concepts are this about. Is it about trust? Is it about self-care? And then I try to zoom into these concepts. But we can also, very often when I'm working with a team, it can be what concept would be important for this team to implement into it, if we should make a strong team. And then perhaps we have, like, it could be good with respect, perhaps creativity, etc. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to get started. So I'm going to, you know that in our little true story circle, I like to create the sacred space with the tone. There it is. So we'll go ahead and get started. So by way of background, and if you're within the sound of our voice, I'm happy to share the starting memo that I sent Jens to give him some background on the circumstances I'm in. So I'll do that in 30 seconds to summarize. So I operate in 4 areas: as a soccer coach, as a business consultant, as a professor of management in the world, and then a trader of markets, and then also as a military college professor of strategy and logistics. And after a year of COVID, a number of really breakthrough ideas on how to approach the craft of teaching have really consolidated for me, and I have a lot of energy about innovative ideas that I want to carry forward into the world in every one of those dimensions. So a lot of these themes are connected to different departments or different regions of my life, but there are some central themes. And one of them is this idea that I am feeling more time pressure and a desire to get things going. Like, I finally feel like I know something and has been tested by fire, and it has been proven to be useful. And I know these ideas work, and I want other people to use them and to leverage the work that I've done. And so I try to be an innovator, and I'm trying to share those ideas, and I'm trying to present information that is persuasive. But I'm never satisfied with how fast it's going. I always think that they should get it sooner, realize the goodness quicker, and when that doesn't happen as fast as I might hope, then or even as fast as I think that it should, they should just accept the goodness of what I'm saying. And when that doesn't happen, then I start to get bitter and disappointed and frustrated, and I see myself wondering what's wrong with them or what's wrong with me that we're not able to make this connection that I can so clearly see. Part of it is I think, well, yeah, Ken, you've been working on this day and night for 15 months for these particular innovations, and you've experienced it for 15 months. Why should they just take that on faith after 15 minutes? Of course they're not going to do that. So I'm having some tension about giving people space and offering them their choices and just setting the table, but also knowing that these are things that I think should really be done which I think are good reasons. So there is this tension that is now manifesting. It's in the way I am coaching soccer and the way I am relating to other coaches. I have ways of doing things. They have different ways of doing things. I want them to use my ways or whatever. I see it in my executive coaching, in my business coaching, in the military teaching. And so all of those things are, there is like a dynamic tension between I want to hurry up, but I also want to just relax and let things take their natural course. And so that brings me into a sense of turbulence, and I'm trying to find proper ways to remain balanced. As the words that came to my mind as you were speaking was in judo and jiu-jitsu we would call that balance, or kazushi, is the ability to maintain your balance regardless of what's happening in the environment, being able to stay agile, balanced, ready to go in any direction. So I'm seeking to navigate a way to process these competing demands of hurry up, but also relax and trust. And I know that there are elements of my ego in there. I want to be a thought leader and an influencer. I want people to have the benefit of my insight so that they don't have to suffer learning the way I suffer through learning. So that there is some care and concern for others, that I don't want them to have to learn the hard way the way I do, because I always find the hardest way to learn something. It's painful, and I want to spare them that. But at the same time, I know there are elements of trust involved. So that was the background essay that I sent. It was more than 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But let me pass the baton over to you.
Yeah, and Ken, thank you. When I'm hearing your thoughts, I can hear different concepts. You're talking about trust. You're talking about balance. You're talking about tension. You're talking about how to get things through. How to create commitment. I know that you did not use the word commitment, so I don't want, as a coach, to ask into a word that you didn't use, because an important form of this approach is that I believe that everything you are saying is true. I'm not the guy maybe he has a different agenda. So I think I will go for the concept of trust. We can start there. Why is trust important for your life in general?
Yeah, it's I acknowledge that word commitment, and we'll schedule that for another session, because I do have some things to say about that. It follows after trust, but trust is central for me in at least three different ways. First of all, I I question my own judgment and experience constantly to test the quality of my thinking. Can I trust my first impression? Can I trust my gut instinct? Can I trust the results of a analytical thought process? So on both of those sides, whether I'm jumping to the first conclusion and that first feeling, or the result of effortful thinking, it starts for me with what can I trust about what I think and how much confidence can I put in there, especially because I know that the words I will say about my belief are going to have consequences in the world. Other people are going to act on the words that I say. And so I have to be very concerned with the trustworthiness. Is the conclusion that I've drawn trustworthy enough that I should or I could share them with others because of a responsibility? So my highest value is duty, service to others. And part of that duty is I must be a trustworthy person in order to justify the service that I provide to others. That I believe it's important. They should trust me because I am worthy of trust. Not they should trust me because then it helps me do what I want to do. But I want to be a person that can be trusted for the things that I say and the things that I do. Second dimension is that now that becomes important to me when I'm evaluating what other people are saying, because a lot of the things I do require me to make judgments about the things other people say and what they claim and the conclusions they support, because I'm going to act on those on behalf of my clients and my family and my students and my community. And so this quality of trust reaches in many different directions, on the personal level, with other people, and then in institutions and processes that must be themselves worthy of trust. Like I can invest in this tool or this process or this organization to do the right things that I need them to do. So trust is a vital component of all those. And in my point of view, trust precedes truth. In that, in order to be open to the message, to not be persuaded falsely, I have to have some sense in the trustworthiness of the source, of the purpose. So trust now is multidimensional and central to everything that I do internally and with others and on their behalf. So trust to me is sacred in that sense. Aho.
And in that sense, we can take a different path in this conversation. I could ask you, what is the opposite of trust? Perhaps, to explore it a bit more. I could use the word commitment, because to say how does commitment and trust apply, or what's the relationship, because I felt the energy, that you actually have some energy in that word, but I think I will go into more like try to explore more, what does the word trust mean to you when we are doing these conversation. Very often, if I know which concept we should talk about, I would actually do some research around the word. What's the original meaning of the word? Because then it can open up for some new perspective. But if we should explore, both of us, the word trust, what is trust actually? If it was a kind of a house we walked into, what's the difference?
So I think to elaborate on trust, then there is a feeling of it. It is an action verb and a noun. So trust is a thing that I can grant or award, like a coin, that is a value of a personal nature. That when I invest my trust in you, I am putting at risk some element of my essential beingness, some core truthful part of me, which, if lost, has real consequences. So it is not just a speculative, unmeaningful coin. It actually represents a sacred part of my central being that I am now using the verb to entrust, to place to place the results and the consequences in the hands of somebody else while retaining the responsibility for the results myself. So when I am placing trust, it doesn't remove the responsibility for the results from me, but it means I am willing to take the risk of emplacing the trust in someone else because of reasons. So whatever those reasons may be, it was enough to make a decision, an intention to commit. That's where the commitment word comes, that I am committing a sacred, vital part of myself and my responsibility to others. So if I trust you in order to, and then act on that on behalf of others, part of my sacred responsibility that is associated with trust is the fact that I am making a decision to take some risk on behalf of other people, that the consequences of my decision to emplace trust has consequences not just for me, which I can take, but it also has consequences for other people who have placed trust in me to make those kinds of judgments. So there is now a connection, a chain of trust, links in a chain of trust that connect people into a team, a family, a tribe. So it's part of there is a sacred feeling to it, and so both the noun and the verb. And if it was a house, it would be something that stands against the elements, that gives me protection and shelter and comfort and a base. All of those things are aspects of trust at the next layer. Aho?
Yeah.
And when we say aho, for those listening for the first time, that means, that's from, I think, Samoan or something, that is, as it should be, let it be so, and then passes the talking stick. So, aho.
Thank you. And I hope I can see that that sometimes my background is a bit fading, and I just got this thought about Stephen King, but I hope it will be okay. So, okay. Again, can some thoughts about the process? You were talking. I was my question. I use this metaphors of the house, and in your conversation you were using the coin, and a good way actually to make these conversation concrete instead of only very abstract is actually to put some metaphors on it. But when you were sharing your thoughts, one of the concepts you told about, that trust is a kind of an action, and you said that it is about putting risk. You know, that I am taking a risk to trust you. And a path to go now, it could be like if you should put your risk into another person's hands, holding his or hers hand, what should that person, I know, do, or I know, of course, this question is a kind of a systemic coaching question, but again, I ask it on a more general level. So if you should put your life into another person, what should that person be like?
Yeah, it's there is a strong connection for me in what I aim to be in life is to be a person that is trustworthy. And the word, I just have to say, the reason coin was on my mind was my student yesterday brought by this little coin of commemoration for our year of working together. He won our highest award for work in the college. He's been a wonderful student. He has made me a better teacher. And we sealed the deal with, we exchanged coins. I gave him a copper coin with the shape of a dragon and the eye of a dragon, and then he gave me this coin that to commemorate, and it represents for us an acknowledgement of trust given, trust earned, trust leveraged into powerful action. Like with some small part of my help, he has become an amazing student and won awards. Because of his amazing work, I have been able to demonstrate to others why my techniques should be or could be of interest, and that evidence is now the basis of justified trust. Well, we gave each other trust before the results came. He had to trust me that my guidance to him was worth exploring. Instead of doing the other things that he could have done, he took a risk to trust me to do things in the path I suggested, and the results came in, but we didn't know that. We thought it might happen. And then by the same token, when I share his work with others, it's with the trust that they will see that maybe these ideas are good. So to answer your question about what is it that the other person should be that I want to trust them, it should be, I'll use that other word we talked before, commitment. I should sense that on the important things, we know that it's not just one silver bullet that fixes everything, you know. No, it's going to be effortful action over time at a cost and with some friction and some false starts, but endurance and resilience in good times and in bad. You think of the marriage vows. Someone that I know can go the distance. That what we're doing is connected at such a deep level of values and identity that I know that they will call upon all their resources to respond to any challenge, whatever it may be. When I sense that in others, then it makes me want to trust. And when I trust and it works, it just feels so good that to have taken a risk that paid off, but also even to have placed the trust, and it may not have worked out great for other reasons, but just the willingness to do it and to live it and to try it and to experience life and ups and downs. There is a value in giving trust of its own reward. The fact that you're able to release yourself into others is an offering of a sacred part of yourself to the world, that you have a belief in the power of goodness and commitment. And so there is a satisfying bond of emotional value that comes from the act of trusting. Better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. That works for trust for me in the same way. So when I think of that other person, that connection between the love of what we share, the love for each other, the reliability, the commitment, the endurance, all of those things collectively have a feeling of trust and trustworthiness about them. Aho. I have about 15 minutes before I have to head to class. So
Yeah, fine.
Okay. And you and I can talk about these things for hours and hours, but it's all part of a continuing conversation.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can just say a few words again. In your answer, you have an example, and if we, if this was a more traditional coaching, I would explore that example with you, and perhaps I would ask a question into it. Have you an example, a story about how this was a story about trust? But here it is more like I could instead of asking a question, but because a very big part of this protreptic approach is that it is a conversation, and I got this idea. What you are sharing here is you are actually creating a room for me. Trust is something. Of course, we need to dare to take risk, but it's also a way to create a room where people actually can walk into and feel safe. So perhaps my idea is that if I should create trust, I really need to be aware of how can I create a room for that person so he can walk into it and we can meet over a cup of coffee, and what I also, my association, and when we are doing these conversation, it's also about being aware of the energy. And for me, what you just shared, and I'm always aware of how my body react. And a part of the story, I got, I don't know what the American word is, but I got goosebumps on my arms, and so I have this idea. Here is something real. This is powerful, and what comes to my mind is that how does trust and freedom relate? And that could be a way to go in through, and say trust, commitment, freedom, because the core of these conversation is actually to give people a sense of freedom. Like, this is, if I can go into this and if I can engage in this, a part of it is to move the energy, which can create trust, perhaps, which can create commitment, and in the end, which can, I don't know, sell in your projects or ideas, or
it can lead to things.
And in that sense, we are back from the start in a way. Balance. We're also talking about balance.
I think as we've been working together on these ideas for 15 months, and one of the most powerful images and concepts that have come up for me, and which I've shared with you before, is this idea of the true story circle is first a place of safety, trust, truth, and opportunity. That there is a chain, a value chain that is created. And to work backwards, it feels like in order to take opportunities of risk in the world to try to achieve something, in a world of impermanence, I get all that, but we're also here, in my view, to be part of this world, which is action. So to go for an opportunity has some element of risk and reward. I want that to be based on the truth. And that's what true storytelling helps us create, is to discover those shared truths or insightful truths that come about in the exchange of stories. But that the truth is contingent on a feeling of trust, that I can trust you, that the unvarnished, unprotected truth, the unguarded truth, if I say it that way, I can reveal truthful things because of the trust that I have in you. And that in order to be trusting, the safe space says, well, the consequences are not fatal if I judged wrong, So there is sort of a process of earning trust built on safety. It's safe enough to begin to trust a little so that some of the truth can emerge, so that opportunities can develop, and then that virtuous cycle creates reinforcing power that can be leveraged in the world. So there is a relationship, a chain of relationship and values that are created throughout all of this. And from the very first time we started working together, my sense was that, yes, I was in a safe space and that I could trust that my words would be received in the spirit with which I offered them, and that the words that you give me, I trust are coming from your best place for the purpose of me thriving in this world so that we can go forward together on our shared ideas. So there is a chain of value that's created through there. And in my experience with this protreptic coaching, as you've been demonstrating, is the ideas that in our conversation you were genuinely listening. You didn't have preconceived ideas about where you wanted this to go, but you were willing to trust that you could hear the truth and do something with it. And then you set the table for me in this room. We could go here, we could go there, and I suggest maybe we go this way because of the values of the protreptic, to be able to raise it up from the details to the conceptual. I think of it this way, and I will conclude with this remark. When I'm teaching classes of any type, sometimes the end result is for them to be able to have the answer. So I start with a question, and we navigate finally to the answer to that question, mission complete. The more interesting ones are if you start with what you think is the answer and then explore that and unpack it and relax, and you end up with the best question to think about on your next path, in your next journey. And for me, the protreptic actually works almost in both of those ways when you take the time we spend together and the time we spend apart thinking about these stories. It's like we started with the answer. The answer was, my problem was this tension between this and that. And here were specifics. And an hour later, we've sort of emerged into what is the best question now to think about to illuminate the situation. Unhurried, we're not getting to a destination. We're just really beginning the next phase of that journey to explore ideas. I have things to think about now about freedom, commitment, energy, trust, process, building rooms. All of those things are now points of departure around which I will begin to generate stories, to explore previous stories, to try restorying. You've given me degrees of freedom that unlock the tension that I am feeling. without being directive, without giving me advice, saying, "Oh, Ken, you should do this. You should do." Because in my life, I did that when I was in the same situation. That didn't happen. What happened was really by hanging these lights. Each light is a concept, and where do we want to explore? That's how it feels to me at the end of these. Is that you've given me 10 possible rooms to explore, or paths to walk, or concepts to reflect on that connect back to the start point, but I have real freedom now to explore that space. So aho. So thank you and as always, just let me say in public, thank you so much for your gentle guiding hand, which is not just a pat on my head. You make me do the work. You make me want to do the work. You make me trust that the work we do is truthful and useful and is going to be of benefit to others. And I know it will be. So I just want to say in public, thank you. And I would go further to see if I could make you blush, but I'm not sure that
no.
to penetrate your Danish defenses. I don't know. But
no.
thank you for all that. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. And it's as I said in the beginning, it is always a pleasure to meet with you, have a conversation with you, and all the stuff that you put into all your ideas is I'm really grateful about it. And I want to say one last word that actually the concept of freedom, the concept of friendship, the original word is from the concept of freedom. And when I am with friends like you, I really feel this freedom. So thank you, Ken, for inviting me into this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm going to hit the gong to sort of to seal that sacred space of our conversation room. And I will say, as I head off to my next classroom, one of the things that I will do now is my practice is to make a quick sketch of all the places we've been, so that I can document the places I need to go work on. And I trust that I'll have time to do those things. But I usually will then make some kind of sketch that will lead me to our next path, and then write some essay about that journey. And so I'm just, again, to those of you that are out there listening, this took us about an hour, and we probably spent 15 or 20 minutes on the front end. So this was maybe half of what maybe a typical session might have been. And some of the points of departure that Jens brought to my attention, we could actually explore some of those. Like, what is the opposite of truth? What is this room like? What other, we could explore commitment, or explore any of these other chains. And the important thing for me to notice was the back and forth, the setting the stage, the exchange of stories that were live, but which built on each other. So my sense was that you had a feeling about where we could go and how to go, but really let the stories take us where the conversation needed to go. So that would be my quick note. Yes, sir. Aho.
Yeah. And again, this approach is, if you can imagine an iceberg, normally when we are talking about values concepts, we are just exploring the top of the iceberg, and this is a way to go deeper into it. And in that sense, this about creating a kind of a foundation where we can act from values instead of emotions and feelings. And there's there's no ending of these conversation. It's not like there's a right answer. It is about just remembering to have these conversation. Is so important to explore values, which is important in life.
Yeah, I had a picture of reverse mountain climbing, is iceberg exploring. To go down into the roots. It's the opposite of mountain climbing, but it's the same thing. You're just going the other direction into the roots. So, anyway, hey, good to see you, my good friend. And
you can.
If you send me the link, we'll get this recorded. We're not going to edit it because it doesn't need editing. We don't need, our stories are just as they should be, however they come out. That's what it was in exactly that moment, and that's all it ever has to be. And now we give that story time to just breathe and grow and just let it be what it is. That's the other thing that I appreciate about this, is that we don't immediately have to process it, make it mean something else, and do that. No, just relax. Let the story be what it was. It frees you to make space for the other stories. So start receiving those other feedbacks, those other rebounds and waves and new things coming in. Every story creates space. Once you've shared it, you've now created space inside for the next things to come, whatever they may be. Trust that what those are will be a reflection of your intention. In my view, when you tell that true story as best you could, that intention is recognized in the universe. The universe knows your intention. It does. And so it will give you the things that you give. Your gift to the world is the gift that you receive. So by giving your best gifts all the time, you're open to receive the best that the world has to offer. I believe that, and I'm trying my best to live that way. So, I'll see you on down the road, my good friend. And if you can send me the link, I'll get our little video, prepared and posted. But thank you so much for this. I knew it was going to be good. I had no idea it would be this good. But then it always is. So
it always is.
Never fails.
Thank you, Ken, for the good conversation.
Take good care, my friend.
Yeah.
Yep.
See
Bye.
you.